Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Keith again with WCCF Tech TV, and today we're here to talk about the MasterLiquid Pro 240 from Cooler Master. Now, there are some things that do set this cooler apart from the competition because, as we all know, at this point in the game, most 240 millimeter all-in-one liquid coolers are just about the same, save for the fans. I mean, most of them are either produced by Coolit or CoolIT or Acetec. There are a couple of different variations out there that handle things like Silverstone and Intermax, but those are minor players in the game. Now, the packaging for this particular all-in-one is quite nice. If you want to see a video that breaks down the box as well as each component one by one as we go through an unboxing, feel free to hit the card at the top of the screen and have a good look at that. Otherwise, for this video, we're going to talk about the technology that goes into this particular cooler, as well as the installation and performance characteristics of it. The entirety of the new cooler is based around what they're calling their flow-op technology. We're going to start with the radiator itself. It is a square radiator rather than the typical rounded, almost looks like it came out of a miniature car style radiator that you see on most all-in-ones. It does have a nice stamped Cooler Master logo on it, as well as comes with a rubber gasket for the fans, which is a nice little feature. The biggest kick with the radiator is the fact that the particular fins that go across the water from the water channels within the radiator. So typically what you have is a V pattern, goes like this, where say this is the V and this is the water channel. The water channel goes here and it touches like that. Well, on this particular cooler, it is using what they're calling their square fins. So it's almost square, ignore these fingers, and there we go. So you got square where you've got a flat surface and the fin goes directly across rather than in a V pattern. So you got the water channel goes here, square, more surface area touches the water channel and then can dissipate across. So it allows for better efficient cooling using the radiator with less turbulence, lowering noise, improving heat transfer. Yes, it is still an aluminum radiator, but that kind of comes with this territory. The next thing they have here is the FEP tubing. Now it's either hit or miss whether some people don't really care and some people really dislike the FEP tubing. I personally would have liked to have seen it covered up similarly to what Cooler Master did partnered with AMD with the Fury X, where it is sleeved the entire way. It looks really nice and very premium, and especially for the price point of this product, would have been nice to see. Now, the pump itself is where the unique factor really kicks in. The other things were unique to the Pro 240, but the pump itself is actually quite ingenious. See, typically with all-in-one coolers, you get a pump block combo where the water comes into the pump, it goes across the cold plate and then back out through the same area. So it just circulates the water through the channel, whereas the dual chamber flow-op pump actually draws water in through the top chamber where it spins it around into the impaler and then pushes it out a channel, down a tube, back into the cold plate where it actually sprays down onto the copper cold plate, much like a custom water loop would do. With the way the water block works, it ejects the hot water out of the other side of the tubing into the radiator to be dispersed. So does all that work? And we'll see as we get to the conclusion. Now, the fans included are a bit different. They have ditched their old Blade Master style fans, which I think we can all agree was probably a good move, in favor of their new Master Fan air balance fans. Now, the deal with these fans are quite interesting. They are fully sleeved cables, so they look really good. They are a ring design with rubber dampeners hooked to them. Now, the blades are translucent and they're quite dense, but the real star of the show with this fan is if you flip over to the back, just like in the previous video, you'll see that there is a selectable PWM limiter. So these are full PWM. They go up to 2,500 RPM, but you do have stops limiting it at 1,000, 2,000, and then 2,500 RPM, letting it go full speed. Now, these come preset at 2,000 RPM, so we left them there for the sake of this review. Now, as far as installation goes, we did use this on our X99 system. We found it a little bit more cumbersome with the AMD system as well as the Intel system for the socket 1151 because the back plate and pins don't actually secure to the motherboard. You have to secure it in a sandwich style, which means you have to hold it, push the block down, and screw it. The rigidity of the FEP tubing made this kind of difficult. However, installing on an X99 system was absolutely simple. Of course, just like with most coolers, you install the 4 standoffs, then you drop the cold plate and block combo down on top of the CPU and then secure it with the retention rings. And that's really all there was to the installation. Now we've talked about what it is, what it comes with, the features, and what you're probably most interested in is how well does it perform. Well, as we take a look at this video playing in the background, what we're going to do is talk about the testing methodology. Now, this was tested in a Cooler Master Master Case 5 with the side panels removed and none of the additional fans going. So it's essentially the same as testing in an open test bench, where the only thing that's going to affect the cooling of this cooler is the cooler itself. Now, the ambient room temperature was 22 degrees Celsius, so keep that in mind when looking at these results. We did compare it to the Corsair H100i as well as the Silverstone TD02 Lite. The H100i is representative of probably one of the most popular all-in-one coolers and what most people would likely have. Now, the Silverstone TD02 Lite is a very budget-oriented cooler. How well do all these three things stack up comparatively? In the first test, we have it at stock clocks, where we left it at stock to see how stock performance is running Prime 95 and small FFTs, and you see that it's kind of a wash as far as the temperatures goes. Not a huge difference in temperatures. However, when you look over at the fan speed, you'll see that the Cooler Master Pro 240 is running at a much lower RPM. In my opinion, kind of gives it a good lead. Now we're going to look at overclocked. Now overclocked, we're running the processor at 4.2 gigahertz at 1.25 volts. And anybody who's overclocked the 6800K knows that it's quite a hot puppy and pretty hard to keep cool. Again, we see very similar results. We see all three coolers maxing out their fan speed to stay relatively within the same margin of error when it comes to temperatures. However, once again, we see the Cooler Master Pro 240 at a much lower RPM, maintaining similar temperatures. Now, the last test that we looked at was in gaming, so typical use with this while you were using it daily rather than running a ridiculously overpowered stress test. And what we see here is, well, once again, fairly similar temperatures. However, once again, we see the Cooler Master Pro 240 coming in at a much lower fan speed to maintain similar temperatures. But what do these sound like? Well, without having a proper sound meter, because ours broke and will not register anything under 40 decibels, what we did, we set up the camera about 1 meter away from the test bench and used the microphone on the camera because it picks up every sound that comes within earshot of it. And we did the run with the overclocked Prime 95 to give you an idea of going from idle to load with each different cooler. So let's take a look at that now. Well, there you have it. There's the sound profiles. I know it's not as scientific or technical as some people would like, but that's what it sounds like. Now, our final thoughts on it are for the positives. We're looking at it is really quiet for what it is. It kind of changes the idea that all-in-one coolers have to be noisy. If I had to compare it to anyone, I would have to compare it to a Noctua air cooler and what it does. Great cooling, very quiet. It's easy to install on X99 systems. It's a bit cumbersome on the other platforms, but it's still relatively easy with its single PWM 6-watt powered pump. Keeps you from needing additional SATA power to run this unit. Now, the biggest con for me personally is in the aesthetics department was the FEP tubing. Would really have been nice to see this wrapped, again, very similar to like what they did with AMD with the Fury X, because that looked on point. And The other problem that we did have while starting the test, which delayed the results, was the fact that one of our fans in the original packaging did have a bit of a rattle, and it was noticeable. Reached out to Cooler Master. They had no problem replacing it, as I feel if anyone had this problem when they got one, they would get it replaced with no problem. Overall, it's a good package, it's a unique look, and it is something fresh to the all-in-one cooler market. Well, this has been Keith with WCCF Tech. If you found this video entertaining or informative, please feel free to like and subscribe, leave comments with questions that you may have, and we'll catch you all in the next video.